From stories across the world to stories here at home, this is the National News Broadcast. A very good evening to you. I'm Nitya Sarachandra.
A very good evening indeed. I'm Charitha Niparachi, and now let's move on to the headlines for tonight's news.
The President advises tea manufacturers to leave no room for the brand name Ceylon tea to be tainted. Motorcycles for public health inspectors who contributed in controlling COVID-19. The former Defence Secretary makes a revelation at the Presidential Commission probing the Easter Sunday attacks. 33,000 kilos of dried turmeric concealed in 3 container trucks seized by the police. Travel restrictions reimposed in several countries due to COVID-19 risk.
Now, in your top story this evening, motorcycles were gifted today for 805 public health inspectors who rendered their service during the COVID-19 pandemic, even at the risk of their lives. The ceremony was chaired by President Gotabaya Rajapaksa. Public health inspectors who had not received motorcycles during their service period were given priority. Thereby, 749 public health inspectors serving in 26 MOH regions and 56 public health inspectors selected on priority basis received motorcycles. As part of the recruitment of public health inspectors, a 2-year full-time training course is to be conducted. The President stated that it will be discussed with the University Grants Commission to extend their training period and create the opportunity for a degree to be awarded. The event was attended by Health Minister Rupavahini and a group of invitees. President Gotabaya Rajapaksa advises tea manufacturers to leave no room for the brand name Ceylon tea to be tainted. The President was expressing his views at a discussion held today on the production of quality tea with small and medium-scale tea factory owners and exporters. Recent media reports carried content on adulterated tea in sugar and types of glucose which were mixed with also sodium bicarbonate and mixtures such as ferrous sulfate. The tea industry has suffered a setback since such adulterated tea is rejected in global markets. President Gotabaya Rajapaksa asserted that no room will be left for the tea industry to suffer the damage suffered by the pepper market. The decline in quality in the production of tea has resulted in a contraction on the demand in the world market from 65% to 45%. Chairman of the Tea Board, Jayampati Moligoda, stated that 705 tea factories function in the country, out of which irregularities have been reported in 45 factories, while production of 18 factories was suspended after investigations were completed. Upon intelligence information, the police and the Police Special Task Force conduct raids on tea factories that produce tea adulterating with refused tea and hazardous chemical content. The President instructed the officials to close down factories that produce substandard tea. He also instructed the acting IGP to raid such organizations. The discussion was also attended by State Minister Kanaka Herath and Principal Advisor to the President Lalit Veeratunga.
And the committee report on quarrying rock stones in state-owned lands was submitted to Prime Minister Mahinda Rajapaksa today. Lands Commissioner General RMCM Herath headed the Committee of 12. Upon accepting the committee report, the Premier inquired into its recommendations and proposals. Attention was focused on implementing excavations and utilization fees under one procedure as a measure to minimize issues practically faced by industries engaged in the quarrying of rock stones. In addition, Premier instructed the relevant officials to implement amendments to enable the industry to pay the outstanding tax amounts under concessionary payment method. The Premier further stated that the public purchasing rock stones for the construction of houses should not be impacted by such implementations. The National Rockstone Producers Association pointed out that when licenses are to be obtained for rockstone mining, the government-owned lands, several institutions have to be visited for recommendation letters to be obtained. In response, it was decided to proceed along with a single common procedure when issuing the relevant mining license. Attention was focused on obtaining environmental and archaeological recommendations only from the Geological Surveys and Mines Bureau. In addition, attention was focused on obtaining archaeological clearances once for the mining of one type of rock. Minister Chamal Rajapaksa pointed out that due to the mining license issued recently for a land in the Surya River area with the caves and ponds, out of two of large rock mountains, one has currently been destroyed due to sand mining. The Premier contracted Director General of Archaeology Professor Senra Disanayaka and provided the necessary instructions. The discussion was also attended by Minister Mahinda Amaravira and Secretary to the Premier Gamini Senarath.
Now, the Department of Meteorology has issued a warning for heavy rain in parts of the country for the next 24 hours. Due to active southwest monsoon conditions across the island, showery conditions over the southwestern part of the island and in northwestern province are expected to enhance temporarily from today. Heavy rainfall of about 100 to 150 millimeters are likely at some places in central, Sabaragamu and western provinces and in the Galle and Madhur districts, the department has stated.
Since last night, the meteorological department advises to the fishermen who are fishing in the Bay of Bengal area, especially at the central Bay of Bengal and the north east Bay of Bengal, eastern area of Bay of Bengal. In the deep sea areas, people who are fishing, especially multi-day boats, those mentioned areas has to be not to venture this sea area, and all the fishermen's been alerted with that prevalent situation as per the instructions given by the meteorological department. Rain condition also been reported, especially in the central and the Sabaragamu province. There are some rain being recorded yet. Met department is expecting more rain today onward, especially in the central province and the western province, the Sabaragamu and northwestern province as well, Kalutra and Galle and Madhur district. 100 to 150 millimeters could also be expected in those areas. People need to be very vigilant of the signs of the landslide. If signs been observed, they need to move from these locations. Slanting trees, cracks of the ground, sudden muddy springs could be the signs of the landslide. We have alerted all disaster management units and military and the police and all the equipment's been standby to face upcoming disaster situation. 117 call center number is completely open for disaster information mechanism in 24/7 basis in 3 languages.
And meanwhile, a revelation was made yesterday before the Presidential Commission of Inquiry probing the Easter Sunday attacks from the former President Maithripala Sirisena. They did not summon IGP Pujija Sundara for Security Council meetings due to a dispute that arose pertaining to the transfer of former CID Chief Inspector of Police Nishant Silva. The disclosure was made when former Defence Secretary Hemasiri Fernando testified before the Commission yesterday. The State Additional Solicitor General first questioned as to whether the overseas intelligence information received on the 4th of April was taken up for discussion at the Intelligence Evaluation meeting held on the 9th of April last year. To this, former Defence Secretary Hemasiri Fernando responded with the words that translate as, quote, "The responsibility of taking up the piece of information for discussion rested with Nilantha since it was information received by Nilantha. The 8th of April last year was a special day for the Defence Ministry as the Indian Defence Minister had arrived in the country and everyone at the Defence Ministry was busy. It was such a moment that the head of the National Intelligence met with that evening and appraised the information. I carefully went through the information and instructed the National Intelligence head saying, this is very important. Ask Nilantha to take this up for discussion at tomorrow's meeting. On the next day, when it was Nilantha's turn, he said, Saharan is conducting sermons with extremist content and extremists are alleging towards violence. However, he did not say that Saharan is a terrorist. Nilantha, during his turn, did not make any mentioning on the information he received on the 4th of April. Towards the end of the meeting, Cicero Mendes showed me information when he had in his hand received on the 4th. At the point, I asked Nilantha, what action did you take for the information? He responded saying, Sir, I have notified the IGP. Another report is being prepared. I will complete it and send it. So I was satisfied with the reply, unquote. Testifying before the presidential inquiry, former Defence Secretary Hemasiri Fernando further stated that by March 2019, the Army Commander Mahesh Naik had on several occasions brought his attention that intelligence received on the State Intelligence Service was not being shared and it seemed that they have been bypassed in the process. The former Defence Secretary stated before the Commission that he responded saying that he will discuss the matter with the President and give an answer. At this point, Presidential Commission of Inquiry questioned as to whether the witness discussed the matter with the President. To this, the witness responded with the words that translate as, quote, "No, I did not get an opportunity to speak with the president. External parties had created a dispute between the president and myself. Therefore, the president was not willing to speak with me," unquote. Former Defense Secretary Hemasiri Fernando further recorded testimony that translates as, quote, "Then IGP Puji Jayasundara participated only in the first Security Council meeting that I attended as Defense Secretary. Therefore, the president has instructed me against summoning IGP Puji Jayasundara for this meeting." After the constitutional crisis that transpired in October 2018, former Prime Minister Ranil Wickremesinghe and former State Minister of Defence Ran Wijewardene were not invited to attend the National Security Council. With the toppling of the government in October 2018, I asked then President Maithripala Sirisena, "Sir, shall I invite new Prime Minister Mahinda Rajapaksa to attend the National Security Council?" Then the President responded saying, "No, not necessary. We will tell him later." However, with the 52-day time period, the Prime Minister of that government, Mahinda Rajapaksa, was never invited to attend the National Security Council, unquote. At this point, the State Additional Solicitor General, hearing evidence on the Commission, raised the question, which translates as, "During the time period that you attended the National Security Council, where there were participants who were neither permanent members of the Council nor special invitees." To this, former Defence Secretary Hemasiri Fernando responses translates as, quote, "One day when we were gathered at the Security Council venue and awaiting the President's arrival, we were surprised to see him being accompanied by 4 individuals. There were 4 individuals who was of the Sri Lanka Freedom Party, which the President represented. They were Dayasiri Jayasekara, Lasantha Alagiyawanna, Mahinda Amaravira and Tilanga Sumatipala. However, that were not invited to attend the National Security Council. After the 52-day government ended, when once again Prime Minister Ranil Wickremesinghe was sworn in, I personally met with President and said, 'Sir, in 2002, during former President Chandrika Bandaranaike Kumartunga's term, then Prime Minister Ranil Wickremesinghe attended the Security Council.' The President responded with the words, 'No, it does not matter if he was invited then. He will not be invited now, not necessary.' Nevertheless, as of then, the President was in bitter dispute with the Prime Minister and with those officials that sandwiched in the road, unquote. At this point, the State Additional Solicitor General queried of the decisions incidented which led to former IGP Puji Jayasundara's exclusion from the National Security Council meetings. To this, witness responded with the words that translate as, quote, "At one of the National Security Council meetings, then Security Council headed Ravi Wijewardene raised a complaint against officer of the CID, alleging that a particular officer in attempting to arrest him arbitrarily. The President in response instructed IGP Puji Jayasundara to remove IP Nishantha Silva. Since the President's words cannot be disregarded, the IGP transferred IP Nishantha Silva to Negombo. The National Commission was also notified in accordance with laid down procedure. After 3 days, the President spoke to me and asked, 'Upon whose permission did you transfer Nishantha?' I responded saying, 'Sir, it was you who ordered the transfer.' Then President dashed the phone stating I did not order to transfer him. After a few days, I went to meet the President. The President said to me, 'Look at what this fellow has done. He has written to the Police Commission and also made reference to the National Security Council.' The President ordered me not to summon the IGP to National Security Council again. Thereby, upon order of the President, I notified then IGP Puji Jayasundara accordingly. Instead of the IGP, then Senior DIG of the Criminal Investigations Department, Ravi Seneviratne, was invited to the National Security Council," unquote. The Additional Solicitor General queried of the witness as to whether former President Maithripala Sirisena has on certain occasions asked him whether he is out of his head. The witness responded with the words that translate as, quote, "Alas, many a time have I heard so," unquote.
Now, in the meantime, the Department of Government Information states that the comments voiced by Minister Kehelia Rambukwala in a response to a question raised by a journalist on the 17th of this month at the media briefing to announce cabinet decisions has been misinterpreted by a few media outlets. Now, issuing a release, the Government Information Department states that the minister only stated that currently Sri Lanka has taken steps to withdraw from the co-sponsorship of the 30/1 resolution. The question was put forward by a journalist pertaining to a statement made by the UN Human Rights High Commissioner regarding the country and the response of the permanent representative to Sri Lanka. The release states that the minister's response to the question did not imply to Sri Lanka's withdrawal from the United Nations Human Rights Council, but only to the country's withdrawal from the co-sponsorship of the resolution. Now, in the meantime, President Gotabaya Rajapaksa claims that the biggest problem faced by the country is the inefficiency of the state and private sectors. Slow action by both sectors hinder the development of the country, states the President. President Gotabaya Rajapaksa held a discussion with officials of the State Ministry of Rural Housing, Construction and Building Material at the Presidential Secretariat in Colombo yesterday. Discussions were held on future plans of the State Ministry at the meeting. President Gotabaya Rajapaksa pointed out the rate of construction process in building projects in Colombo city is not equal or adequate. He informed the relevant parties to expedite the construction process of the ongoing city development projects. The President requested from all stakeholders to ready for a new development revolution with a change of attitudes. He pointed out that one main objective of his manifesto is to offer a proper residence to every family in the country. The President instructed the authorities to solve the housing issues of the estate workers with a plan to uplift their living standards.
And meanwhile, the 37th commemoration of veteran politician Late Hector Kobek was observed today. Hector Kobek, born on 19th August 1916, entered active politics in 1947. He was one of the initial members of the Sri Lanka Freedom Party and functioned as the Minister of Agriculture and Lands in the Unity Alliance government of 1970, under which the Land Reformation Act was introduced. Hector Kobek was the presidential candidate of the Sri Lanka Freedom Party in 1982. He passed away on the 18th of September in 1983. The 37th commemoration of veteran politician Late Hector Kobek was observed under the patronage of Prime Minister Mahinda Rajapaksa at the Hector Kobek Agricultural Research and Training Institute premises today. The Premier offered floral tributes to the statue of the late Hector Kobek. The Hector Kobek Federation presented the Premier with a souvenir and a booklet.
Welcome back. Now, before we move on to stories from home, let's take a look at how some of the countries worldwide continue to battle COVID-19. Now, Singapore has the lowest coronavirus case fatality count globally, with just 27 deaths among the more than 57,000 people who have been infected with COVID-19 in the Southeast Asian island.
Singapore, the city-state of 5.7 million people, has seemingly weathered the COVID-19 storm better than anywhere else in the world, with a death rate of only 0.05%. way lower than the global average of about 3%, even among countries of similar size like Denmark and Finland. It means that of the 57,000 infections, there's only been 27 deaths in Singapore. But how has the island managed such a feat? Singapore's leading disease experts said there's a number of factors behind the country's success. First, Singapore was very successful in containing the spread of the virus through early detection, using aggressive contact tracing and testing that won praise from the WHO. It has tested nearly 900,000 people, one of the highest per capita rates globally. Dormitory residents have been put on a rostered testing regime. Authorities have undertaken mass testing among vulnerable communities, including care homes, and anyone over 13 with signs of acute respiratory infection is offered a free test. This preemptive approach has also been applied to treatment. Doctors said that COVID-19 patients above 45 years or with underlying conditions are cared for in hospital, even if they are otherwise well. It also built up bed space for coronavirus patients in exhibition halls and temporary facilities to house those with mild or no symptoms. This prevented the healthcare system from being overwhelmed so that attention and resources could be focused on the more severe cases. It's difficult to compare across borders though. Singapore strictly adheres to the WHO's case definition for classifying COVID-19 deaths, so it does not include non-pneumonia fatalities like those caused by blood or heart issues among COVID-19 patients in its official tally. The country's health ministry has said its approach is consistent with international practice.
And the Silicon Valley startup Wispy Medical has received emergency use authorization by the US Food and Drug Administration for a portable COVID-19 test kit, the first company to do so.
A portable COVID-19 test has been given emergency authorization for use by the U.S. Food and Drug Administration. According to the FDA Thursday, Silicon Valley startup Visby Medical is the first company to get emergency approval, allowing its test kit to be used now in clinical labs. U.S. officials have been pushing to increase the availability of tests, particularly those that can be conducted cheaply from any location and quickly produce results. Visby's test produces results in as little as 30 minutes, with the stated goal of eventually being sold to consumers for use at home. Visby founder and CEO Adam De La Zerda explains.
Of course, you need to first collect the nasal swab, and once you do, the sample goes into here. Once you put the sample in here, you close the lid. Now you need to press the 3 buttons. 1, 2, and 3 in this order. And now you just have to plug the device to the wall from the back, smaller power adapter we give you, and the thing starts running. With 1 line telling you you're negative, and 2 lines means you're positive, just like reading a result from a pregnancy test.
Visby's device is what's called a PCR or polymerase chain reaction test. It rapidly replicates DNA or RNA, and it's considered an accurate diagnostic tool used in infectious diseases labs. PCR testing usually uses a machine the size of a large microwave and can cost hundreds of thousands of dollars. De La Zerda started working at shrinking that machine to a portable size fitting the palm of your hand over 7 years ago, initially for diagnosing sexually transmitted diseases. But with the outbreak of COVID-19 around the world, the company quickly pivoted. A lack of testing capacity early on in the pandemic hampered efforts to control its spread in the U.S., infecting more than 6 million Americans. Dr. Gary Skulnick, Visby's chief medical officer.
When you have a test that provides that kind of rapid testing capability, you're able to make decisions rapidly, communicate them to the patient. It means that patients will get the best possible care.
Visby currently produces around 50,000 test kits a month, and the pricing has yet to be decided. But the company, which has raised over $300 million from investors so far, hopes to ramp up its production to bring the cost down.
Now, in the meantime, the UK is struggling with its testing capacity as demand appears to outstrip supply, and there are problems elsewhere in Europe too.
The days are getting shorter in Europe, but in some countries the wait to get a coronavirus test is getting longer. It's raising concerns with spikes in cases and fears of a big second wave of the virus in the winter. The United Kingdom is having among the most acute problems. This week the UK government promised to do whatever it takes to boost laboratory capacity, which has left thousands struggling to get a test. Prime Minister Boris Johnson promised in May to create a world-beating system to test and trace people exposed to the virus. But Reuters has seen hundreds lining up waiting hours for tests, such as here in the town of Southend-on-Sea. Some said they'd been trying to get tested for 4 days. The government says fixing the system would take weeks, and it's not alone. Other major European countries have also had hiccups. Germany introduced free tests for returning travellers this summer on concerns over rising infection numbers. But it backtracked only a few weeks later as labs faced capacity constraints. And a data blunder in Bavaria meant around 1,000 people with positive results were not told. France, another one of those badly hit right now, is conducting around 1 million tests a week, according to its government, but it's struggling to keep up with demand. Long lines have been snaking outside testing centres in Paris. Very few appointments are available for tests for several weeks in advance.
And back to news from home. A testimony recorded today at the Presidential Commission of Inquiry on Political Victimization revealed that whilst misleading the President Maithripala Sirisena, former Director of CID Shania Besekar and several officers presented details to the Attorney General's Department in connection with the abduction and enforced disappearance of journalist Prageet Eknaligoda. The statement was made when retired Corporal of the Army First Level Intelligence Force Ravindra Rupavahini recorded evidence before the Presidential Commission of Inquiry on Political Victimization. He stated that charges have been levelled against him, alleging that journalist Prageet Eknaligoda was taken from the Giritale army camp to an area at Akkaripattua and thrown into the sea with a rock tied around him. He further stated that CID officials influenced him to admit to the said charge. He added that he was heavily influenced to the state former Defence Secretary Gotabaya Rajapaksa was connected with the incident. Therefore, the evidence was recorded by retired Army officer J.M. Ranpanda today. He is one of the main state witnesses pertaining to the abduction and enforced disappearance of journalist Prageeth Eknaligoda. He stated before the commission that on the 9th of August 2015, a team of CID officials arrested him while he was engaged in farming. He further stated that thereafter he was brought before former CID Director Shania Besekara and was told that officer is waiting outside and to act as the said officer's instructions. He added that he was detained throughout 3 months, given a false evidence document, completed to memorize the document and repeat the contents before the court judges.
Now, Minister Bandula Gunawardena warns rice mill owners that if they do not take quick action to issue adequate rice for consumers, the government will import rice to bridge the market shortages. Now, he stressed that the government will not allow the increase in the price of rice. A discussion between Minister Bandula Gunawardena and leading rice mill owners and vendors was held at the ministry in Colombo today. The minister issued a stern warning to vendors and mill owners to not create an artificial rice shortage at market. He said the government will take every necessary step to avoid such malpractice. He pointed out that the government is ready to import rice for short-term basis if there is a shortage at the rice market. Now, in the meantime, 10 suspects were arrested by the Blumendal police last night for smuggling 33,000 kilograms of dried turmeric concealed in 3 container trucks. Now, the police said the 3 container trucks were found from a warehouse in the Blumendal area. Now, during the raid, another 3,000 kilograms of orid were also found concealed in containers. The whole of turmeric and orid was imported to the country while declaring them as glass to the customs to evade the government taxes. Senior Deputy Inspector General of Police Deshabandhu Thenakone said that the containers were removed from customs after checking. He said that the stock of turmeric had been imported to the country via Dubai by a businessman from Matakulia. The suspects were arrested with 3 container trucks and 7 lorries by the Blumendal police. Meanwhile, another 1,000 kilograms of turmeric worth 4 million rupees were confiscated by the Sri Lankan Coast Guards. The consignment was smuggled from India via Chilau. The boat used by the smugglers was confiscated too. Further investigations are currently underway.
And the underworld figure Janit Madhushankar alias Podilasi was questioned by the Criminal Investigations Department for over 6 hours today at Boosa prison. A team of CID officers has visited the Boosa prison earlier today in order to record a statement from the suspect. Podilasi was yesterday named as a second suspect in the case filed over the death threats made in public at the Boosa prison against the president, the defense secretary and certain high-ranking officers of the prison department. Galle Chief Magistrate had ordered to name him as a suspect in the case after considering a request made by the CID through a motion. He was also ordered to be remanded until September 25th in connection with that case. Another organized criminal, Army Shiva, was arrested yesterday by the narcotic unit of Kaladure police. Police said that he was a key associate of the underworld kingpin Makandure Madhush. 3 grams of heroin, a shotgun, a hand grenade, a body armor and military uniforms were recovered from the hiding spot of the suspect. Police found several military-style maps from the location. The 50-year-old Abdul Sharif Mohammad Rifas alias Gotukolea, the main suspect of the assault of a group of police officers at Aludgama in Bandaragama, has been arrested in Bandaravela this morning. Police say the suspect was wanted over the assault on police officers and for the profession of trafficking of cannabis.
Now, the Colombo International Book Exhibition was inaugurated today according to the health guidelines issued by the health authorities. The annual event commenced amidst health concerns due to the coronavirus pandemic. The exhibition will continue till September 27th at the BMICH from 9 a.m. to 10 p.m. It is organized by the Book Publishers Association. There are no foreign publishers taking part this time. The exhibition consists of 400 bookstalls like the previous year.
And with that, we conclude tonight news. Do it just tomorrow at the very same time. Stay safe. Good night.
Good night.